Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. What's going on, guys? It is time once again to be live, and tonight is a special occasion. You guys know I absolutely love getting a chance to speak to so many of the amazing people out there, content creators and friends and movie fans alike. And tonight is no different because we have a really cool guest here, and I'm hoping that you guys are ready to rock and roll. Real quick, before I bring her on, just to say a blanket hello to everyone that is here or might be listening. What's up, Jerry? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well, man. Thank you for jumping in here. We got Board in the chat. What's up? Saying, hey, good to see you. RJ, what's going on? Saying, I'm so ready for this. I saw a lot of 90s horror in theaters when I was a teenager. Well, this is going to be the stream for you. Yes, because myself and my guest were huge fans of the 90s horror as well. Paula is in the house. What's up, Paula? Good to see you. Paula is always on time, on point, checking in, asking about when we're going to be live. We've taken a few days off. You guys know how that goes, but tonight we're ready to hit the ground and run. Gene, what's up? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Saying hello. All right. Very, very cool. And for anyone else that is here or jumping in, definitely a blanket hello. But let me bring on my guest. I will not hesitate any further. And for any of you guys that do not know her, I'm hoping that you get a chance to get to know her tonight. She's an awesome content creator, has her own YouTube channel, and also a very amazing supporter of this community here at the Night Watch Zone. So I'm so happy to have her here. Let me bring it on. It is Rachel MacDonald. Hey, what's up?
Hello to everyone. Hey, Night, thank you for having me on. Super excited to be here. And yeah, just eager to see where the night takes us, or the morning, as is my case.
Yes. Now, okay, so let's start off there. It is the morning for you. Now, if you want to divulge your location to people and the hour difference that we got going on here so they can appreciate it, because I sure as hell do appreciate you doing this.
Yes, so I am located in lovely Australia, just near the capital city, Canberra, and it is currently 9:37 a.m. where I am. So a little ahead of time. I'm almost like a time traveler here. I can tell you
Yeah,
guys what's going to happen in the future.
right, exactly. Well, and I also want to say, and we do have a couple of folks, actually a couple folks in Australia specifically, but we got some folks over in the UK and so forth. My good buddy Ginger Ninja is over in Australia as well. And it's so funny because and I speak to him a lot, and I have to sometimes remember the time difference, like when I'm streaming at night. He'll talk about how he's at work, and it's like I
Yeah,
have to kind of, but that's the awesome thing about the internet. You can connect to people all across
absolutely.
the world, you know?
Hmm.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I have put the link to your YouTube channel in the private
Thank
chat.
you.
I'm sorry, into the live chat.
That's
Um,
amazing. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. And we'll do that some more. So, what I always like to do is kind of start this off kind of at the origin, because for me, it's also a way for me to get to know you more because I found your channel. It was just one of those types of things where I, watched some of your stuff and I was kind of like, wow, this lady's all right, and you kind of as a movie fan, it sounds weird, but I mean it honestly, is like as a movie fan, you kind of feel some type of connection to other movie fans.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, what I felt when I saw your content. But where did your movie fandom start? Like, if you could let the folks know kind of where it started, how it started, what was it like early on for you as a movie fan?
Oh, well, I kind of describe myself as having always been a massive nerd. I love movies, I love TV shows, I love books. I have since I was a kid, and I actually wasn't allowed to watch a lot of movies when I was growing up. My mother was a little into censorship and definitely followed a lot of ratings to the T. So when
Yeah.
I was a teenager and finally got to the age where I was allowed to, I finally started to watch a lot of movies. And for some reason, I just started to watch a lot of horror movies. A lot of movies were coming out. It was the early 2000s and just got really into them. And I really started to fall in love with not just the stories that you can tell with movies, but how you can tell these stories, the different ways, the different languages of media. I love studying film study in class. I love just, every movie has its own unique, magic to it, whether it's a good movie
Mm,
or a bad movie. There's something there. And I just think, it's a great way to connect with people. It's a great way to
mm,
share your passion with people. And I think horror movies, in particular, I love so much because I was born in the 80s but grew up in the 90s. So I caught the tail end of a lot of kids movies from the 80s, which were essentially just like little horror movies.
yeah.
And I really think that's where a lot of it comes from. You had The Never Ending Story, which had the existential nothingness, which was a nightmare in itself. You had
Yep.
Return to Oz, which was definitely not your kid friendly Wizard of Oz, from when you were little. You had Labyrinth, with the
Hmm.
creepy puppets and David Bowie with his six socks. It was all just a rich tapestry. And
That's
I think
right.
that really, really got me into it. And I just think, like I said, movies are they can be whatever you want them to be. If you just want something dumb and fun to watch on an afternoon, you can put on a nice little B movie. If you want something deep, you can put on something that obviously is going to give you a bigger message. And it's just a great way
Mm.
to connect with people. So I think I've just always been a nerd and just always loved stories and loved getting into media. And that's kind of where it came from.
Nice. That's awesome. As soon as you said 80s movies, kids, and horrific, the never ending story came into my mind. Ooh,
I
man.
know, right? That movie, just so many images from that movie just stuck in my head and just
Hmm.
never left. And I remember rewatching it as an adult and going, "This was a kids movie. This was
Right.
marketed as a kids movie, really?"
Yeah.
And
Right.
you really have to wonder. But that was a
Yeah.
trend in the late 80s. They really loved to make kids movies, these little mini horror movies that,
Hmm.
ooh, just scared the crap
Yeah.
out of you.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, that movie had
Mm,
so many dark elements, so many heavy elements. I mean, obviously, nobody wants to see any animals meet their end and so forth. And um, so it's really heavy.
I
It's really
know.
heavy. I mean, hell, man, just thinking
Hmm.
about it. But did you hear that they're doing a reboot of it or a remake of it?
I didn't. That will be
Yeah,
interesting. I'm not
yeah.
always on board with remakes and reboots,
Mm-hmm.
especially because I think these movies, especially from the 80s and the 90s, there is a very specific feel to them that is so specific to that decade that it's hard to
Mm,
recapture it. I think one of the reasons that these movies
mm-hmm.
remain so magical is when you go back and you watch them, you're like, this is definitely a kids movie that was made in the 80s. And it just has that. I mean, sometimes you can recapture it. Obviously, you have shows like Stranger Things, which can recapture that kind of feel of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a very hard thing to recapture in a remake or a reboot. But that will be interesting. Is there any word on who's directing it or who will be in it? Or is it just in the
No.
early stages yet?
No, no, as far as I know, and I haven't followed it super closely, but I haven't heard anyone specifically attached to it. But that the fact
Okay.
that they want to remake it and kind of tap into that whole mythology and so forth. And I absolutely agree with you. I'm always kind of, and people that watch me talk about remakes probably feel like I'm always like hemming and hawing because there's sometimes I think that it's a great idea and it works, and then sometimes I'm very much against the idea of it until it can prove me otherwise. And this
Yes.
is an example of that because, like you said, I think with some movies, and especially if you're talking about the 80s,
Hmm.
there's a charm, like you said, that is so hard to recreate. And part of that charm is the struggle. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't have everything at their disposal, so they just
Yes.
made things work.
Hmm.
And what we get out of it is the beauty of that struggle.
Yes.
A great
Yes.
case in point, well, there's a thousand, but thinking about the poster behind me, Jaws, they couldn't get the shark to work. Now, that was a struggle.
Yes.
That was an issue, but
Hmm.
it made the movie and the tension so much greater. Today, that shark would have been working overtime. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
The shark,
Absolutely.
the
Yes.
shark, the shark would have been talking to us. Bruce would have been talking to us, okay? Um, so you lose some of that charm, if you think
Mm.
about The Thing. Now, it's funny because The Thing is a remake, but
Yes.
what they did was they tapped into the older film, The Thing from Another World, and Carpenter also kind of went into his own style and so forth. And then you have someone like Rob Bottin, who just the wizardry, with the
Hmm.
effects, the practical work, and that's what made it special. So
Absolutely.
I don't know what to expect from the Neverending Story. I'll probably check it out just out of curiosity. But
Yes.
that 80s film is always going to be special for what it is. So yeah,
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 absolutely. And you mentioned effects, and that's another thing. The 80s were full of practical effects, that movie as
yeah.
well. And
Hmm.
if they remake it, I can't help but feel they're going to go CGI. And CGI has its
Hmm.
place. And
Yeah.
obviously, there are some movies that would not be what they are without CGI. But
Hmm.
I really do miss the practicality from the 80s and the 90s of those tangible, real effects that you can feel that this is puppetry, or this is someone has worked very hard behind the scenes to make this work. This isn't just someone sitting at a computer. And I think
Hmm.
also, CGI studios, the main movie will get made and then it'll get passed off to some studio to do the effects, and then they might not be as
Right.
good. I really do feel like we've lost a lot when we lost practical effects. I
Yeah.
know it's probably more cost effective or whatever to do CGI, but you watch some of the behind the scenes from some of those older movies from the 80s and the 90s and those horror movies, and you just see the way they had to work. I mean, The Thing is a great example. All of
Mm.
those practical effects, every effect on there, so good. I remember
Hmm.
watching the 80s horror documentary In Search of Darkness, and
Yes.
that was a fantastic watch, and just seeing the practical effects, and you really miss them now. You just
Yeah.
feel like horror doesn't have that. It's almost like, yeah, that tangibility of being able to see that this is a real thing that the actor is working with, as
Hmm.
opposed to probably just a tennis ball on a stick.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, CGI definitely has its place, and there are definitely
Hmm.
monsters and movies out there that would not be the same without it. But practical effects, I feel like we've really lost something there.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, even though I'm not as fond of 80s horror movies as I am of 90s, I will always give the 80s huge props for all of the special effects that they did on so many
Hmm.
movies from the 80s. It's just a real lost craft,
It is.
and I would really like to see it come back, but we'll
Oh
see.
yeah.
We'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I miss those days. I miss those wizards, Stan Winston, Rob Bottin, Rick Baker, and well, like I said, it's just the way that it is. You hit it on the nose. CGI has its place. There are some things that you do need it for. A good example that just came to my mind, like The Walking Dead. Like
Mm.
Greg Nicotero, he came out of practical effects under
Yes,
Tom
yes.
Savini.
Hmm.
And for some of, or I should say, for a lot of the effects that they do with the walkers and all that type of stuff, it's practical, but they'll use CG to kind of just smooth some things out, help some
Yes,
things out a little bit. I think that is a great marriage as far as today, with the
yes,
possibility of still keeping things practical and just use a little bit of CG to help it out.
yeah.
So anyways, um, I was going to ask you about remakes, so we actually got to this quicker than I thought. I might jump back to that in a little bit, but real quick, just to
Hmm.
say hey to some other folks jumping in, we got my good buddy Neil from Neon Black
Hey,
Reviews.
oh, thanks, Neil. Cheers.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for doing that, Neil. We appreciate you. Much love, brother. Much love. RJ
Mhm.
also subscribed. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah, you guys are all right.
Hmm.
Um, Gene, hopefully you found us on Facebook. I hope so. We're there. I try to be as in many places as I can. It can be a challenge, but I try. Um, Melissa's here. She made it. Melissa Melissa was keeping tabs. She was like, I haven't seen you live in a week. What's going on? It's like you guys are all right.
Thanks, Eric.
Um,
Cheers.
you're all right, Eric, my good buddy Eric. Awesome stuff, man. Thank you so much. And Neil's working hard, putting in the link for the Facebook. Thank you so much, man. All right. And we got Julie in the house. All right. Julie is
Hi,
in the
Julie.
house.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here. And thank you so much for helping out with moderating too and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Um, let's see. RJ is not a fan of the never ending story getting rebooted. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. No doubt. Um, we got Steven in the house, my
Hey,
brother.
Steven.
We're craving something scary. What's up, man? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Steven's going to be rocking out tonight. He's got, it's funny because when we talked about a time to do this, and this is kind of,
Mm.
we had a couple different ideas, and then this settled on. I was like, okay, well, this works out really good that we could do it at this time, because my buddy Steven, he's going to be on tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. He's going to have Zach Cherry on. That's going to be awesome. So make sure that
Oh,
you guys,
nice. That'll be a good
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Mm.
get ready to hang out with Steven tonight, guys. And he also subbed to you as well, Rachel. So awesome stuff, guys.
Lovely. Thank you. That's
You
awesome,
guys,
guys.
you guys are all right. That's all I gotta say. Okay. So now we talked a little bit about your horror fandom and movie fandom, how you got into things, which is really cool that you just kind of gravitated to those things and nerdum, so to speak. I love it because I'm the same way. As far as YouTube and doing a channel and being a content creator, which by the way, again, your channel is great. And I know you just recently
Thank you.
celebrated 10K a few months
I
ago,
did.
didn't you?
I did. It was huge. It was a huge milestone. So massively
Phew.
appreciative to everyone who subscribed and to everyone who's subscribing now. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Let me just say, and I know a couple guys in the chat, Eric, Neil, Steven, we can all we all know how that goes, man. Getting people to be a part of your channel's community
Mhm.
is such a huge thing. So huge congratulations. That is not an easy
Thank
feat
you.
whatsoever. I'm telling you. So it's awesome, and more more than well deserved. But how did you start your journey with YouTube? What was that like, and how is it going today? And is there any advice for other folks that are also on that journey?
Yeah, so it was an idea that I had been toying with for a little while, because I really started to be on YouTube a lot around 2014, 2015, just finding, little channels that did movie reviews. And I just kept thinking to myself, I like to talk a lot and I have a lot to say. And I was kind of
Mhm.
just contemplating back and forth, do I do this? And then I remember the news of the Charmed reboot came out and everyone was talking about that. And I thought, okay, I can do a video on that. So I just set up my camera and started to talk and found that people really liked it. And I think Charmed in particular is a show that doesn't have a lot of content out there. So when I started to make more of those videos, I was finding a little niche area for people that really wanted more serious discussion, because Charmed, bless its little heart, it is definitely a bit of a silly show, but I wanted to concentrate on a bit more of a serious side. So I started in front of the camera and then found that I was a little less comfortable constantly doing face-to-face things. And that's when I got the idea of starting to write video essays. I had
Mhm.
already, I'm on a lot of discussion boards, and I'm on Tumblr, which is still embarrassing to admit in 2024, but it's a reality. And, I write a lot of analysis. So I thought, well, maybe I can turn this into something. And it literally just started as something I started to do on the side and I started to have
Mhm.
fun with. And then I started to get a little bit of an audience. And I found that my Buffy content and my Charmed content in particular was really starting to get an audience. And yeah, it's just kind of moved from there. The last couple of years, I've had some personal problems, which means I haven't worked. So I've just been working on my channel and it's been really fun. I mean, it can be frustrating for anyone who wants to start out. Just know that the beginning can be very frustrating because you sit there with your little like 15 to 20 followers and you think, oh my gosh, I'm putting out this content. Why isn't anyone following me? And then you realize that the YouTube algorithm is kind of a pain in the butt. So it's
Mm.
not really, I think you have to remember that it's not you. The content you're putting out, as long as you're putting out what you think is your best and you're
Mhm.
happy with it, then you just have to kind of let the YouTube gods do what they do and work out
Right.
the algorithm. But I really
Mm.
love it. I love being able to share my opinions with people. There's nothing better than getting a great comment on a video saying, oh, you've changed the way I've seen things, or I never thought of it this way. And I think any advice to anyone starting is just do it from a place of love. Don't do it
Mm.
from a place of, I want to get followers. Because I think if you do it from that place, then you're always going to be worried about, oh my God, I don't have enough content. I don't have enough followers. I don't have enough engagement. My
Right.
advice is just pick something you love and talk
Mm.
about it. And people, I think, will respond to that. And I think people respond to that more than they respond to the analysis or anything like that. If they can feel that you have a passion behind you. Like
Mm,
I felt that when I first watched your channel. I was like, these guys, they love horror. They know what they're talking about. The passion is coming out. And like you said, people connect to you through that. So
mm.
that's kind of how I started. It started from a place of just, yeah, wanting to get my opinion out. And it's kind of grown into what it is now. And I've kind of rebranded it now because a lot of people kind of pointed out, they're like, you do a lot of 90s and early naughty stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of stuck in my teen years. So I rebranded it to that and said, okay, I'll own it. I'll be the old school girl and do all
Yeah.
the old school stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's
Mm.
awesome because it does one thing that, like you said, the algorithm gods, you just have to kind of ride the wave. And I
Mhm.
think one thing that is that I've seen over the years of doing it and also being friends with so many content creators, if you can find that corner that you love, like you said, Charmed doesn't have a lot of content. Matter of fact, that might have been one of the first videos I had seen of yours. And I was kind of like a casual Charmed friend, but one of my best buds is like the hugest Charmed fan of all time. He's got he's He's probably gonna kill me if I say this. He still has a poster of Charmed up in his house.
That's awesome. I love
It
it.
is,
Love
it is.
it.
He's got the DVDs and it's crazy. But so when I watched you, I was like, okay, so I immediately had a sense of who you were as a movie and media fan, and it was really cool, and it kind of brought me down memory lane a little bit. And of course the way that you can communicate your ideas is fantastic. And so I was like, man, okay, let me hit that subscribe button. And it's been really cool to kind of you know watch your content, and then obviously getting a chance to connect with you a little bit here in this community. And I always love that because there's so many great content creators out there. It's
Yes.
really cool. So, um, well, that's awesome as far as your journey. And I know that like you said, you have to just kind of love what you do because it is a
Yes.
challenge, man. It really is. I
Oh
think all of
yeah.
us can tell so many horror stories about
Hmm.
YouTube, and
Oh
the
yeah.
algorithm can be a pain. I'm just gonna agree with
Yes.
Yeah, it can be. It really, really can. Real quick too in the chat, let me just jump to these guys for a moment because we've got our good friend Mayan in the house saying
Hey
hello.
man.
What's up, May? Um, and guys, we will be taking questions for Rachel. We may not be able to get to them all because I want to make sure I don't keep her on here too long. But for sure, we'll try. So try to be patient. SPC, what's up, man? Good to
Hey.
see you. We got Kaz in the house saying you are awesome.
Hey,
She sure
Kev.
is. Yeah. Jen, what's going on? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Uh, Gerald, what's up, man? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. And let's see. And RJ is saying, I prefer the old Charmed over the reboot any day. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Absolutely agree. 100%. Yes.
Yeah, no doubt at all. No doubt at all. Okay, so let's start to move into some familiar territory.
Okie dokie.
You're a huge 90s horror fan,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I am too. Now, I obviously you've been around the channel, so um, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. I have a huge affinity for the 80s. I love the 90s, but the 80s, I always kind of go back to the 80s a lot. What are some of your favorite 90s horror films and or recommendations for those who may not have spent a lot of time checking out 90s horror?
Well, I will start with the most basic answer, but it is my favorite horror film of all time, and that is Scream,
All right.
because I mean, just the ultimate perfect slasher. Wes Craven at his best, Sidney Prescott, ultimate final girl, and it's what kind of revived horror in the 90s. Obviously, we
Mm,
all know that horror was kind of starting to die a little bit in the 90s, and then Scream came along. So, obviously, Scream and all its sequels absolutely fantastic and just gave that slasher boom in the late 90s that I absolutely adore. So like I said, no, it's a little basic, but it had to be said. Absolutely love that movie. Other ones that I love from the 90s, I am a huge fan, and I've talked about this in the chat before, of It from 1990. I actually prefer this to the remake, which I know it's an unpopular opinion. I actually
mm,
think it's a better adaptation of the book. I think I know it's a miniseries, so the budget is a little bit, that spider at the end is not fantastic.
That's right.
You know, you got- I mean,
It's
a
true.
claymation spider is coming towards us. Oh no, it's
Right.
you got to take it with a grain of salt. But I do think, I mean, obviously you have Tim Curry, who is just iconic. I first
Mhm.
saw it when I was very, very young. It was one of those movies that I should not have seen so young. I saw it at a sleepover, and I remember being terrified to go near storm drains for like all of my childhood because I'm like, there
Mhm.
is no way I'm going down there to find Pennywise with a balloon waiting for me. It's just not going to happen. So that
Right.
one I would highly recommend to anyone who has only seen the new series. Like I understand that the remake has a lot of things that a lot of people like, and obviously it was able to do a little bit more of the scares, and the CGI is better. And look, I think that Skarsgård as Pennywise was really good and definitely made the role his own. But
Mhm.
for me, nothing beats that iconic, Hiya Georgie from 1990. It will just
Yeah.
always be so, so good. So I
Mhm.
absolutely love that. Another one from the early 90s that I absolutely adore is Candyman. Candyman is, oh, just yes, one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
Mm.
Tony Todd, I mean, he looks so fine that I would absolutely be his victim. Like, he could just talk to me in that voice, and I'd be like, yes, please, Candyman, take me away. Because he is so beautiful in that movie, but he's also so terrifying. And I
Mm.
really do love that they do try to work some of the racial overtones in and try to, talk about, you've got Cabrini Green and the residents there. You've got the Vanessa Williams character and the Candyman requel. I will say, I'll just go a little off topic. The one that came out recently by Nia DaCosta, I will say that is one of the few sequels, reboots, remakes, whatever you want to call it, that I thought was fantastic. So,
Mm.
but the original is so, so good. Just, absolutely fantastic. And I think that, it will always just stand up because it
Mm.
is just such a good one. I've got a couple of guilty pleasures from the late 90s, some of the slashes that came out, like I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, Halloween H2O. The Faculty is one that I think is severely underrated, doesn't get a lot of shout
Mhm.
outs. Such a great little kind of invasion of the body snatchers, science fiction type. I kind of feel like it was trying to do to science fiction what Scream was trying to do to horror. And
Yeah.
I think that it actually did quite well. It's got a fun little cast. That one little Elijah Wood before Lord of the Rings, which is always really fun to see.
Right? Yeah, I agree.
And I'll also give a shout out to my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street sequel is from the 90s, and that is Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which I always say that
Mm.
without New Nightmare, I don't think we would have had Scream because you can
Mhm.
definitely see the building blocks there. I love the meta-ness of New Nightmare. I love that it's Heather Langenkamp playing herself and the way the
Yes.
script, slowly she has to become Nancy and she has to go back into the movie. You have that great little cameo from Wes himself in that one, which is just so much fun.
Mhm.
And I really, really love that. And so that would definitely be another one that I would add there. I mean, of course, you've got, great ones like Silence of the Lambs. You can't list 90s horror without listing Silence of the Lambs, which is,
Mhm.
just, I mean, creme de la creme of horror movies. So good. Sir Anthony
Mhm.
Hopkins, only 20 minutes of screen time. How is that possible?
I
He
know.
fills that movie.
Oh my god, so true.
It is
I love it.
absolutely insane. I remember when I found that out, when I found that out through IMDb or whatever it was, I was like, "No, no, there's no way he's only on screen." And then I went and I rewatched the movie and it was like, "Wow, it's true." But he just fills that movie with his presence, you
He
know?
does, he
Now I got
does.
a couple that I'm going to say now that if Coriander is watching, she's probably going to want to hit me for, but The Blair Witch Project and The Sixth Sense were both game changers, okay? Like, I know the girls got issues with them both, but they were huge game changers for the horror genre. And they, regardless of how you view them. So, poor
Oh,
Coriander.
I
Oh, dear.
know.
But, The Sixth Sense, the twist ending had obviously been done before, but that was, it had not been done for a while when that movie
That's right.
came out. And I think the Blair Witch Project, I think looking at the way it weaponized the internet and the way it used the internet for its marketing was, I think, really, really clever. And
Mm,
the way they marketed it as a real film. And when I first saw the Blair Witch Project, it scared the pants off me. Like, I remember
right?
not being able to sleep that night. Oh,
Mhm.
man, just really, really, I think it's that whole there's nothing scarier than what you imagine.
Right,
And
right.
so I just think that is fantastic. Gerald saying, "What about Wishmaster?" Ah, Wishmaster. Well, that would definitely go, I think, in the guilty pleasures. Oh, along with
Mhm.
Leprechaun, we got to mention Leprechaun for the 90s.
Ooh, there you go,
Crazy,
yeah.
scary little dude.
Yep,
But yes, so those would be my favorite 90s movies and the ones that I would recommend to everyone.
nice.
I think it's a very overlooked decade, which I get because the
Yeah,
80s, obviously the horror boom in the 80s cannot be matched, and all the
mhm,
practical effects that came out. And, we had a lot of like really significant changes in horror. But
mhm,
I think the 90s gets overlooked because the first half did drag a little bit. But I think that
right,
second half, we really need to give props for how it really revived, the slasher genre, revived the horror genre. And I think it paved the way for the early 2000s to have a ton of really great horror movies that kind of built from the 90s. You had like
mhm,
Final Destination and Ginger Snaps. You had the others. You had all the start of the remakes of the Japanese movies, which, of course, in
yes.
the 90s, you have the original Japanese Ring. Oh, and I have to mention Audition because, oh my
Ooh,
gosh, did
yeah,
Audition just mess
yeah,
everyone up when they
that's
watched
right.
that?
Good
But again, it was
call.
that introduction of Japanese horror becoming a little bit more mainstream and entering Western horror, and we started to see more of those remakes happen in the early 2000s. So yeah, I think the 90s
Right.
deserves its props, and it doesn't always get them.
Yeah, I totally agree with pretty much everything you said. All the films, they're great films, and you're right, the 90s do get overlooked. And I think again, like you said, the 80s was just so powerful, man. I
Hmm.
mean, like, you had the Trinity, Michael, Freddie, Jason.
Yeah.
Freddie ruled the world, from the mid 80s throughout the mid 90s, obviously right before, New Nightmare. And I think that there was just so much energy that
Mm.
was in the 80s. Everything was clicking
Yes.
on all cylinders. You had great remakes, The Thing, The Fly, The Blob, so um, it's just interesting how that all affected the 90s. But you're right, Wes Craven literally saved horror.
Yeah,
I I
he did.
I feel, I really do, and it started kind of this next phase, and obviously right now today, we are still talking about that legacy of the Scream franchise,
Yeah.
and it's awesome that it's still here because it's still
Yes.
helping horror. When Scream 5 came out, and of course, it was great because Halloween and Scream 5, they were just keeping that slasher energy going. Um,
Yeah.
and I just think that it's been good for horror, and I think it's good for us as horror fans. So much credit to the 90s. And like you said, so many
Hmm.
other great films. Anyone that's watched me long enough knows that I absolutely love Silence of the Lambs. Anthony Hopkins, my favorite actor. Uh, just even thinking about it, I get all like giddy because
I know.
seeing it as a kid with my mom late at night and getting freaked the hell out. Uh,
Yeah.
I'll just never forget it. Never will. Never, never will. Um, and also, I just wanted to say hey to Sarah in the chat. Thanks for coming in here,
Hey,
Sarah. We
Sarah.
appreciate you. She's saying, "Preach, Rachel, preach." I love it.
Hey,
I do.
Sarah.
I knew a lot of people here would love your takes, as do I. When we had our 90s stream for our Friday night Watchers Live, and we talked about all of those different movies. That was such a fun night. So many great memories and so forth. But the 90s definitely needs a lot more love. No
But
doubt
the
about
audition
that
is
at all.
romantic.
Yeah,
Yes, yes, it is, man. If you want a romantic comedy, yeah, first date movie, absolutely.
yeah, exactly. Uh, hey Ben, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. We got Kay in the chat. What's up, Kay? All right.
Hey.
So let's start to work down the Scream path a little bit more. So, obviously we all love 96. It's a classic. It always
Mhm.
will be, and so forth. What are some of your takes as we go throughout the series, as we go into Scream 2 and
Mhm.
Scream 3, and obviously leading up to where we are today with the franchise, the ups and the downs?
So Scream, I think, is one of those franchises where, and I might be a little bit biased when I say this, but I actually don't think that any of the movies are bad. There are some
Yes.
movies that I do think dip a bit in quality, but I actually think they are all really solid movies. Now, here is my hottest take when it comes to the Scream franchise that a lot of people don't agree with me, but before Scream 6 came out, Scream 3 was my favorite sequel. It is, and I actually think it
Ooh.
is a better movie than a lot of people give it credit for. And I get
Mhm.
a lot of crap for saying this. And I do kind of understand why. But on the other hand, I think that people really need to give Scream 3 a better go. So
Yeah.
Scream 2 was obviously great. And I thought it was a really solid sequel. Although for me, I do feel that it falls apart a little bit in the third act. I find the third act a little bit sometimes a bit all over the place. I have a bit of a problem with like, okay, this is a bit coincidental that Sydney ends up here and so ends up here and this is that. And I'm pretty sure at some point Ghostface actually teleports because it's like, dude, how did you get from here to there? Like that is just not happening. But
Right.
you have some fun new characters. Mrs. Loomis is just, brilliant. It's such a great shout out to Mrs. Voorhees. Laurie
Yes.
Metcalf is fantastic. She is just chewing the scenery like there's no tomorrow. And
That's
I
right.
think that she was a great bit of misdirection because,
Mhm.
you think that she is that reporter at first, Debbie Salt. And I think the reveal of her was really, really fun. And Sydney is always kicking ass and taking names. She's
Mhm.
fantastic as always. My biggest issue with Scream 2 is Randy's demise because,
Right?
like, just Randy, my
Yes.
boy, like, and
Yes.
such a harsh death as well, and just
I
so much
know.
overkill. And I know that fans are still clamoring for him to come back, like, because he's such a fan favorite. But
Yes.
for me with Scream 3, so I think people have to I think you have to remember, first of all, what was going on in the world. Like, Scream 3 was just post Columbine. So
That's right.
media was starting to tone down everything. They wanted to tone down violence. So I think the Scream 3, the writers, they went, okay, we can't lean into the violence. Let's lean into the comedy. And I actually think the comedy of Scream 3 is really fun. I mean,
Mhm.
Parker Posey as Jennifer
Yes.
Jolie is
Amazing performance.
amazing. I really wish she'd come back. And I
I
love
know.
seeing her and Gail Weathers run around together, the two Gail
Oh,
Weathers working together. It's just
yes. It was magic. Every time I watch it,
brilliant.
I love every scene that they're in together. I love Parker
Mhm.
Posey in that. Yep.
Absolutely. Parker Posey makes any movie better. She's
She
just
does.
just brilliant. But I
Mhm.
also think I love that Gail gets a little bit of, because obviously they didn't have Nev. They only had her for a certain amount of time, so they had to use her sparingly. So Gail
Mhm.
gets to be kind of, the proactive final girl this movie. And I really like that. I mean, bangs aside, Gail is pretty awesome in the Scream 3.
It's true.
That I will give everyone. Those bangs are horrible. But for me, and people may disagree with this, but I find that Sydney's arc in the third one is actually one of her strongest arcs, even though she's
Yes.
not really in it, because she
Mhm.
starts the movie completely isolated. She has locks
Mhm.
on her gate, on her inner gate, on her house, on inside her house, in her room. No one knows where she is, and she's completely isolated. And that movie is all about her having to go back and face Woodsboro. I love that scene where she walks onto the movie set and you have the beautiful score come
Yes.
in and you can just
Mhm.
tell that all the memories are hitting her. And
Mhm.
then you have that beautiful ending where she leaves the door open. And I just think of all
Yes.
the movies, you see a complete arc for Sydney in this
Yep.
movie, even though she's not really there that much. Now,
True.
Roman as Ghostface, I kind of understand why people have some issues with him. He's not as dynamic as some of the others. I get that. And I do wish that they'd had a scene between him and Sydney because, it kind of gets to the end and he unmasks and stuff. And we're going, oh my God, but Sydney's probably going, who is this
Right. Yeah.
dude?
Who are
Like,
you, buddy? Yeah.
exactly. Like, I've never seen you before, but
Yeah.
I kind of I don't mind the long lost half brother. It's kind of a bit of a Halloween, shout out. So I don't mind that. And
Yeah.
I even don't mind that he ended up being the one who kind of pushed Billy and Stu into the murder because for me, it kind of just
Right.
brings the whole thing full circle. So we have this kind
Yeah.
of complete trilogy that absolutely works. I know it's a bit cheesy. That weird Jay and Silent Bob cameo really made me go, "What is happening here?"
Yeah, I was kinda like, "What?" I was like, "What are we doing here, guys? This is
Yeah.
it's kinda weird." But yeah,
And
yeah.
but it is also directed by Craven, so the direction is still good. A lot of the fights are
Yes.
still good. We obviously get less blood because, like I said, they were starting to tone things down. But that's my biggest hot take when it comes to Scream is that I love Scream 3. Now,
Yeah,
the
it's great.
newer ones, my least favorite is Scream 4. And I think because
Ooh.
when I watch Scream 4, I just
Mhm.
don't get the same energy as I get from the others. I feel a lot like Nev and Courtney and David, but Nev in particular seem to be phoning it in a little bit. And so I
Mm.
don't feel Sydney as much in this one. I don't love the new characters in this one either until Jill is revealed at the end, because Jill is just a psycho and she is fantastic. And
Yeah.
Emma Roberts chewing the scenery in those
Ooh.
last 20 minutes of the film. So, so good. The
Mhm.
Maureen backstory is my favorite part of the. You know, I'm with you, Jen. I actually really like the Maureen backstory. Oh, and I meant to mention,
Yes.
even though it's done in a very clumsy way, I do like that Scream 3 does try to shine a light a little bit on Hollywood and, you know, the going ons in Hollywood. Again,
That's right.
it's not done either subtly or well because it
Mhm.
was the
Agreed.
early 2000s, but I do like that. So yeah. But yeah, Scream 4 I find it's a little bit middle of the road, but I
Mhm.
do love the two new ones. Scream 5 and particularly Scream 6 I thought
Mm.
were so good. Sam Carpenter, I loved Sam Carpenter from Scream 5. I know a lot of people took some time to warm up to her, but
Right.
I tend to identify with older siblings, especially older sisters, because that's where I am in my family. So as soon as I see an older sister, I'm like, yep, we have a bond. We're connected. And I really, really loved her. I thought she was savvy. I thought she was fun. I don't love Ghost Billy. I remember when Ghost Billy popped up, I was like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we all want Skeet to come back, but CGI
Right.
Ghost Billy, maybe not. But
Right, right, right.
Scream 6, I thought with the setting change, I thought New York City was fantastic. That
Yeah.
subway scene was so,
Yes.
so good and just worked
Mhm.
so well. I loved that they brought Kirby back. Like, I absolutely loved seeing Hayden. That was
Yes.
A plus, and
Mhm.
she's adorable and she's fantastic. And I thought
Mhm.
Scream 6 had some great characterization. The core four, love the core four, man. They
Yes.
are just fantastic. The Meeks
Agreed.
twins are great. Love the Meeks twins. Especially Chad really got some character development in the sixth
Yes.
one, which I thought was great. And of
Mhm.
course, Jenna Ortega's Tara is fantastic as well. And I love the dynamic between Sam and Tara because they do have
Yes.
such a sibling dynamic. You know, they're yelling at each other 1 minute and then the next minute they're ready to die for each other. And that's literally what siblings are like, you know?
Yes, it is.
And
It's
I just
true.
thought it's really, really great. I also thought that the Radio Silence guys did a really good job with directing them because I remember thinking Scream without Wes. Like, can it be Scream without Wes? And then I saw Scream 5 and Scream 6, and they don't have quite the dynamic directing style that Wes does. I don't think anyone will, but
Right.
I thought they did a really decent job. I thought so many of those scenes were filmed so well. The opening to Scream 5 in particular, I think, is so well done because
Mhm.
it's bringing it back to that basic of just a girl alone in a house with a phone and
Mhm.
that callback to Drew Barrymore. And then I love the subversion of her surviving. I remember when we saw Scream 5 and they called
Yeah.
Sam and they're like, oh, she's in the hospital. I was like, wow, okay, that's a subversion. Okay, you go,
Yeah.
girl.
I
Nice.
know. Yeah, that caught
So
me off
yes,
guard
so
too.
I've really liked where the franchise has gone. I will say that I was not really impressed with the whole Melissa Barrera firing, and obviously all of the fallout to that was
Right.
a little bit off-putting. But I know that Melissa has recently released some statements saying that she's doing all right and she's happy to move forward and she's got new
Mhm.
projects. So Scream 7 will be interesting because I'm not sure what they're going to do with Sydney. I feel like Sydney's story
Mhm.
is done.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I heard a rumor or maybe just a theory that this Scream the timeline might be simultaneous to Scream 6. So we might see what Sydney was doing in that timeline, which could be
Mhm.
interesting. But I'm just
Could
not sure
be.
what they're going to do with her character because I really feel like they rounded her character out with Scream 5 and and also, I'm kind of like, it's Sydney. The girl's had enough. Just let her go and live with her family in the mountains and be happy. Like,
Mhm.
hasn't the
That's
girl
right.
earned her happy ending? I
That's
feel like
right.
at this point in the franchise, she should only be brought back in like when she's like Laurie Strode in Halloween 2018.
Mhm.
Coming back
Mhm.
as the older, wizened kind of mentor. But it will be interesting to see what they do with Scream 7 and how they
Yeah.
open Sydney's story up again, but I am a little bit wary. But the franchise hasn't let me down so far. Like I
Mm.
said, it has its ups and downs. There are some movies that I think are a little bit lesser than others, but overall, this is a really great franchise. So we'll see what
Agreed.
happens going forward.
No, I totally agree. I think I agree with a lot of those takes, and I think that the franchise has been so consistent, the most consistent horror franchise to me.
Hmm.
It's not even a question. And with Kevin coming on to direct, I'm
Yeah.
hoping, and there's confidence there, but I'm still a little cautious because he's not writing it. But
Mm.
being that he's just so much a part of the DNA of Scream, I would think, just like Wes, Wes sometimes would polish things up for scenes and help out, because he was that gifted. And Kevin's the same way. So I hope that Kevin can really, help to inject just polishing some things up if need be, if need
Yeah.
be. I am sad, not to see what's going to continue with Sam's character.
Yeah.
And obviously Tara, although at the end of 6 you could say, hey, they ended it. She put the
Yes.
mask down, she's
Yes.
walking away, and maybe they'll return at some point. So it's going to be interesting. But with 7 bringing Sydney back, I think they've got to really nail the story, the why, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And obviously her family is a huge target, because that's
Yes.
one thing that would bring her back into this whole chaotic mess. And
Mm.
that also could bring some really new interesting things to the franchise that we have not seen before. And I
Yes, that's
think
true.
with 5 and 6 they were able to do new fresh things, and I hope they can continue to do that in 7. And let me just say this real quick. We got Scott Walker in the chat. What's up, Scott? Good to see you. Scott Lauderdale as well. And of course, my good buddy Steven. He's got the hashtag Stu
Oh,
returns. Stu returns. So Rachel, I know, and I knew we were going to get to all this. This is so much fun, and time is flying. So let's just hear it from you. First of all, do you think that there is any plausibility to Stu being alive in the franchise? Is there any plausibility whatsoever?
no. No,
Okay.
that dude had a TV dropped on his head. And we're not talking some crappy plasma TV from like today, okay? We're talking like the massive box, like 90s TVs. And if you were around in the 90s, you know that those mofos, they were heavy,
They
okay?
were.
Like those
They
things fall.
were.
Plus, the dude got stabbed a million times before from Billy. I remember his whole, Billy, I think I'm dying in here, man. It's like,
Getting all woozy.
exactly. So I don't think so. And Stephen, I'm so sorry to say, but I am firmly in the camp that does not want Stu to come back. Because I think it would be, look, all slasher films, all horror films really have to exist in a slightly heightened sense of reality, like,
Right.
so you have to kind of take them with a grain of salt. But Scream to me has always been a little bit more realistic. It's not Michael Myers coming back from, having been shot by the town a million times and falling in a ditch. It's not Freddy coming back. It's not Jason being able to come back. Ghostface dies and that's it.
Right.
They tend to stay dead. So I feel like if Stu came back, unless I literally can't think of a way that they could explain it without it being absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I just think that for this franchise, no, like I totally understand why everyone wants Matthew Lillard back. I mean,
Right.
Stu is one of the most fun ghost faces.
Oh, he
Um,
is. He
okay,
is.
no, it's a good point, Stephen. Only 4 stab wounds. That's true. And I mean, look at what
Look
Chad
at look,
survived in
look at
Scream
Chad.
6.
Chad
Yeah,
is the Terminator, bro. 17
it
stab
really
wounds,
is.
and
Yeah,
he's just licking it off like it's just a Wednesday
I
night.
know. So I totally get it. But like, no, for me, it's a big no. I mean, if they do bring him back, we'll see how it goes.
Mhm.
Maybe my mind will be changed. Maybe they'll do it in a way that'll make me go, okay. But like I said, I keep coming back to that. That was no flat screen TV, man. That was a big ass TV that fell on his head. So I'm
Well,
thinking no.
here's the thing to me is that I think that the breadcrumbs have been laid out so much. And I know
Mm,
that they like to also play with the fandom because there's so many
yes.
people that are big and rightly so big fans of Matthew and wanting to see that character back, in 5 when they had the whole thing on the internet with, Kirby is
Yes.
alive, is Stu
Mm-hmm.
alive, this and that. And then in 6, Kirby comes back. And I remember in the theater,
Mm-hmm.
when I saw it for real, like we knew it was going to happen because obviously we followed everything about it information wise. But when I actually saw Hayden on the screen, I was like, oh man, this is so fantastic. And it just made
Yeah.
me inch closer and closer to the fact that they could bring Stu back. I mean, it looks like you know they keep pointing to that direction. But one thing that gets me is obviously there was all of the turmoil with Melissa exiting and so forth, Jenna exiting, obviously, and bringing Sydney on. And it's kind of like there's two halves of me. There's one half that says, well, they could do so many different things with Sydney if they choose to do so. But then there's the other part of me that's thinking bringing Sydney back for this, you know, this sequel, who knows, maybe it's the last one for a while. Regardless, having Stu being a part of it, being whatever, the mastermind, the head of the cult, whatever you want to call it, man, it would be it the nostalgia would be strong. It would be
I
like,
get
oh
what you're
my god,
saying.
you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Look,
So
even me with my resistance to it, as you're explaining that, I can feel myself smiling. I'm like, no, no, you're right. That would actually be a really good punch, and the poor girl would not see it coming. So it
woo,
could be
right?
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
right.
maybe some more discussions with you and Stephen, and we'll get me on board with this idea. We'll see how it's going.
That's right. That's right. I'm sure I'm going to be talking to Steven. He's like, man, we got to get Rachel on the Stu train, you know, because Steven is the conductor, man. He is. But you know what though? The beauty of it is kind of what you just said. Us just talking about it puts a smile on your face and it makes you think and wonder. And that's the great thing about this franchise is the love for all of these characters, and it does bring a smile to your face. And there's so much that you can always discuss, and all of the anticipation for the movie and what could happen, what
Absolutely.
what might
Hmm.
happen, what don't we want to happen, and that's why I
Yes,
love the franchise so much. Um,
absolutely.
Now let's do this. And Scott was saying plenty of people survive with a TV fall on top of them before they have been reported that happening. That's right. That is right. It is possible, and people have survived being struck by lightning. So you know, a
That is
little
true.
electricity in a TV, baby. You gotta love it. Um, but let's do this. When we talk about the Ghostface killers, there
Mhm.
is obviously a lot of them at this point. I would
Yes.
love, I would love to get an idea of how you would rank them, or whatever might be easier if you want to just give your top whatever, 3 or 5 or all of them. I would just love to hear what you think is the listing of your favorite Ghostface killers.
Absolutely. Well, I actually popped on and saw on the stream that you wanted to do a Ghostface ranking, so I actually do have mine good to go, so I can give it to you
Nice.
from least favorite to most favorite. So let's see
Okay.
how controversial this is, because I think I've got some picks in here that people are going to be like, really?
They're
All
like,
right.
"What?"
So I'll start at my least favorite and go through to my absolute favorite, and I'll try and do these quickly. So coming in dead last for me is poor little Charlie from Scream 4, because he
Okay.
leaves so little impression on me. It's not even funny. I forget that he's there half the time. I do like
Right.
Rory Culkin. I think Rory Culkin is a decent actor. I've seen him in other things where he's fine, but I think Jill was just such a big ghost face, and obviously the focus was going to be on her so much. We just like
Yes.
Charlie's just like, oh, we need a second ghost face. Let's just have it be Charlie. And he makes like almost no impression on me. So poor Charlie gets absolute last. Now,
Mhm.
coming in second last, and this is one I think people are not going to like, but this is might be an unpopular opinion. But my second least favorite is actually Amber from Scream
Oh,
5. And
okay.
I know that she is quite beloved, but I don't know, something about Amber for me, she was a little too over the top. I mean, she just I feel like she was going for like a Stew vibe, kind of that really unhinged, really crazy. But for me, it didn't work. And every time she started screaming, I was like, oh, someone please just lower the volume a little bit. It's a little too much. So I just so yeah, so Amber second last, a little bit unpopular, but that's where she's coming in for me. So after her is Ethan from Scream 6.
Okay.
Sourpuss Amber.
Yes, sourpuss Amber. You know what though? I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. And look, you
Mhm.
guys know we say it here on the channel all the time. There's no lying here. But there's a part of me. I remember I said this. I think I said it on one of Steven's live streams. There's a
Mm,
part of me that it. I'm not saying I would have her high. I'd
mm.
probably have her near the bottom too. But there's a part of me that when I'm watching Scream 5, you know, the last few times, I'm not disliking her as much as I once thought. Now,
Okay.
maybe that's just because, you know, at this point I've absorbed so much of Scream 5 and I'm like
Yeah.
being so more analytical as I watch more and more. But there's parts of me that like, you know, she was all right. You know, I still would have her near the bottom. I don't know if I'd
Mhm.
have her second to last, but I still would have her near the bottom. But there's a part of me that's coming around on Amber a little bit, just a
All
little
right. Well,
bit.
next time I watch, I might have to watch her a little bit closely. Be like, all right, girl, can we sort something out here? We all right? We'll see how we go.
Yeah.
But yes, I've got poor Ethan coming in next from Scream 6.
Okay,
Again, Ethan didn't leave much of an impression on me. I couldn't believe that he was the same actor from Avatar: The Way of Water playing
that's right.
Spider. That was
Yeah.
crazy. And someone told me that, I was like, so different. So he can actually act, because in this one,
Mhm.
I think he's just kind of brought down a little bit by the fact that the other two ghost faces in this movie are a little bit more dynamic than him. And I also
Right.
think with Ethan, I think Scream 6, there's a lot of characters in Scream 6. I mean, every Scream film has a lot
Mm.
of characters, but I feel Scream 6 in particular, you know, you've got Kirby returning, you've got the new cop, you've got Gail, you've got the Carpenters, you've got the Meeks. It's like, I think the new characters get a little bit lost. And I think Ethan, unfortunately, does get a bit lost. I know there's some deleted scenes with him where you find out a little bit more about him being like the second favorite son. So that could be
Yes.
an interesting angle. But because it
Mhm.
didn't make it into the actual movie, you lose a bit of that. So Ethan, unfortunately, didn't make much of an impression on me.
Mhm.
Okay, my next one is another one I'm a little bit nervous to list, because this is another popular ghost face that is not too high on my list. But coming in next for me is Mickey from from Scream 2. I know,
What?
I feel like I'm going to need to do major
Wow.
penance for this one. Look,
Woo! No
I
love for
love Timothy.
Timothy.
I know. Knight's going to kick me off the stream now.
No,
Rachel is
no, no.
banned. Alrighty, Mickey, my boy Mickey. I
Yeah.
love Timothy Oliphant. Okay,
Yes.
everyone loves Timothy Oliphant. I just feel with Mickey, because Scream 2 was rewritten, we all know this, that
Yes.
because Mickey was the second choice for the second ghost phase, that
Mhm.
unfortunately that does kind of come through a bit. I think
Yes.
when he's on the screen, he is fun. Of
Mhm.
course, Timothy Oliphant is very charismatic, but he
Mhm.
also kind of he disappears for like a
He
good chunk of the
does.
film. So when he pops up at the end, I remember the first time I watched Scream 2, I was like, for a second, I was like, who is that? Oh, right, Mickey, right, Mickey's still here. And it was just kind of like, what? So, so I
Oh,
think
that's
that's
great.
why he ranks so low, because I just think there wasn't enough to work with him. And
Yeah.
then I think next to Mrs. Loomis, who is so nuts and so much fun, he just gets
Right.
diminished a little bit. So luckily no one can throw things at me through a live stream, because I'm sure I'd be
No.
getting lots of like rotten fruit and stuff at this point.
No,
But
no, no.
that's
I no, I love hearing different takes on it because I think that's also the beauty of the franchise. There's so many
mm,
angles to the films themselves and also to things like the Ghostface killers. And I think
yes.
that's one of the things I absolutely love about um just the density that you get from all of these films, you know. Have a good night, Gene.
You
Take it
too,
easy.
Gene.
See you next time.
Mm.
But no, that's I like that. I mean, I don't agree, but I dig it. And obviously you hit so many factual points as far as him disappearing and how things were rewritten and so forth. So you're right on the money with that.
Okay, so coming in next is good old Quinn from Scream 6. And I think this is a good ranking
Hmm.
for her. And I think most people would have her around mid. I think Quinn is a fun
Hmm.
character. She gets a bit more development than her brother, obviously, because she is Sam and Tara's roommate. I do love
Yeah.
Mindy's whole little, the slutty roommate. She's like, sex positive, but thank you. And, I think she's a lot of fun. And I also think her death fake out is one of the more fun ones in the series, because
Yeah,
you really think she's gone. So when she
you
pops up
do.
at the end, it's like, oh, girl, okay, this is cool.
Hmm.
But I also like that when she pops up, you reflect back on some of her earlier conversations. Like with Tara, she mentions that her brother died, and there's
Hmm.
little hints there that you're like, oh, okay. No, they actually were laying some breadcrumbs for us. This hasn't
Hmm.
just come out of nowhere. Plus, I really like that actress. I've seen her in a few other things. I think she's quite dynamic, and I think she makes the character quite charismatic. Quinn could have a little bit more to do. She's obviously there as part of the family trio. I
Yeah.
think if you go back and watch Scream 6, I don't know that she actually does any kills. She might help with the first one, maybe, but I think she's more of like just to make up that trio. But she's a fun character and I do enjoy
Hmm.
her. So I think Quinn being there is something that most people would agree with.
Yeah.
And my next one as well, because my next one is Richie from Scream 5, who I actually do quite like.
Yeah.
Again, I like the actor, Dennis Quaid's son, whose first name I've forgotten, but
Yes.
that's who
Jack.
it is. Jack, that's the one. Yes.
Yes.
And oh, sorry, lost my earphone for a second there. But I really like how he's kind of a callback to the original movie of the boyfriend. You know, like I love Dewey. It's like first rule, never trust the love interest. I mean, they told
That's
you
right.
right there. And I
Mhm.
also think he gets some really fun lines. Like I love his "Holy shit, it's Ghostface" moment. Like that is just
Yeah.
one of the best moments in
It
the
is.
whole series. It's so good.
Yes. Yeah.
Just brilliant. And I think he's a fun Ghostface. I think
Yeah.
his what am I looking for? His motivation is fun. I think his relationship with Tara is fun. I think his
Mhm.
reveal was really fun as well. And again, it kind of mirrors Billy. And so I like that it's a callback to that. And yeah, I just thought he was a fun dynamic character.
Mhm.
So that's him. So up next is Detective Bailey from Scream 6, who again I think is very fun.
Mhm.
Again, another actor I really, really like. And
Yes.
again, I think he's chewing the scenery. And I really, really love at the end his showdown with Sam. I love when Sam starts going, you know, how Richie was, oh, he was so pathetic. Your
Yeah.
son. And he's just like, what? No, he's not. You take that back. And he's
Yeah.
he's
Right.
so offended. Yeah.
He was a
Plus,
feral young man.
exactly. And she's like, nah, man, he was a limp dick little pussy. He made his girlfriend do all the killing. And it's like, oh,
Right.
girl. And I just think it's really fun. Plus, I love seeing Sam just stab the crap out of him at the end of that movie. Like,
Right?
girl, he
Wow.
is like, stabby, stabby, stabby. Like,
That's right.
wow. And
Yeah.
again, I think it's a nice little callback to Mrs. Loomis, to the familiar bond. And I kind of like that Scream does that it does these little things that connects the movies without them being an actual carbon copy, you know? You can see
Right.
it's a callback, but it doesn't feel exactly the same. And so I really
Mhm.
like that. And yeah, I think Detective Bailey is really fun. All right, so my next one is one that people are going to be surprised that he is so high on this list. And we've already spoken about him before, but my number 6 is good old Roman from Scream 3. I like Scott Foley. Like I
Yeah.
said, I like the hidden brother storyline. I don't mind the fact that he was the one that set Billy and Stu on their path. And I
Right.
love his and Sydney's showdown. I absolutely love when
Yes.
he's monologuing to her and she's like, oh, for Christ's sake, I've heard this all before. Why didn't you
Yeah.
just shut up? And they even
Right.
have a whole sizzling, you shut up, no, you shut up, ah! And then they go
Yeah.
for each other. And like they point out, I mean, I know this wasn't the original plan, but he is the only Ghostface who works alone. So kudos to him,
Yeah.
you know, that's pretty impressive.
Well,
But
as far as
I
we
do like
know,
Roman.
as far as
As
we
far as we
know,
know. True,
because
true.
I'm telling you, there is some Harry Potter shit going
Yeah,
on
there
in
is. Yeah,
Scream
there is.
3.
Yeah.
Roman is casting spells left and right. I'm telling you, man, it's crazy. I mean, real quick too, and not to interrupt
Mm.
you, but I agree. Scream 3 doesn't get enough love. I think it's so much fun, just in general, just a lot of fun moments. And obviously reworking the whole thing. And Wes, Steven's like, or
Or
was
was
he?
he?
Steven's on board too, man. Like Angelina, hashtag Angelina.
Yes,
You
yes.
know, because look, man, there is no way on God's green earth when Ghostface is chasing Sydney and they run into that table, you know, and knock over the table and they're on the ground
Yes.
and
Uh-huh.
Sydney starts running. There's no reason for Ghostface to go back the other way, to go into the house, into that closet room. How'd you know
Yeah.
that Sydney was going to go back in? I mean,
Exactly.
we're talking Harry Potter,
Mhm.
Professor X reading minds and all that. Look, come on, man. But no, but anyways, yeah, but Roman was fun. Roman was fun.
Yes. But here we have, so top 4, and I think people will be on board with my picks here. So coming at number
Yeah.
4 is Jill, crazy ass Jill. I love. Look, here's the thing with Jill is I don't think she's a great character until
Uh-huh.
she's revealed as Ghostface, which I think is deliberate. You know, they
Mhm.
want you to think that she's the new kind of final girl, a little bit
Yes.
more, you know, meek and not as out there. So you really, because she was one of the few ghost faces that I really did not see coming. Like I remember when that
Right?
reveal came, I was like, dude, really? And I
Mhm.
remember thinking,
Mhm.
did you kill your own mother? And then
That's
she
right.
confirms it, and it was like,
Yes.
oh girl, you are on a whole other planet. And I think
Mhm.
that Jill's motivation, the Jay and Silent Bob cameo was my favorite part of Scream 3. It's so random. It's so
It
random.
was. You gotta
Oh
love Jay
dear.
and Silent Bob.
But yeah, no, Jill, her motivation, because obviously Scream 4 came out just as social media was really starting to boom. And so I
Yes.
love that her motivation is fame. Like, I just love that
Mhm.
she wants to be Sydney. And I think it's also a little bit of a commentary on the final girl trope, you know, and on the victim trope and how the final girl does go on to be very famous. And I remember when I first saw Scream 4, being a little bit disappointed that Sydney didn't die, because I remember thinking that would have been a great start to the new series as Jill with the final girl that she's created herself. You know, like the
Mm.
next Ghostface could be coming after her, because it's like, well, girl, you wanted to be Sydney Prescott. This is what Sydney Prescott does. Now, obviously, I am now very glad that they didn't kill Sydney off, because her coming back for
Right.
Scream 5 was great. But I do
Mhm.
remember, and also she is, I think, the Ghostface who comes closest to killing Sydney, which is pretty
Yeah.
impressive. Like, that
Mhm.
girl is like, you know, she is almost bulletproof, Sydney. So the fact that Jill came so close, yeah, she's
Yeah.
great. Plus, I always love a female villain. A female villain is always really fun and, you
Mhm.
know, always great. So that's Jill at number 4. Number 3 is the wonderful Mrs. Loomis, as like I said, played by Laurie Metcalf with her crazy, crazy eyes. And she is
Yeah,
just she has got the craziest of crazy eyes I have
she
ever seen.
does. Oh my
And I
god.
just love the way she delivers so many of her lines. She's like, poor Mickey
Mhm.
was a good boy. But really, that whole trial thing, I mean, can you imagine? She's just
Yeah.
so, so good. And I do love her as Debbie Salt as well, you know, constantly sucking up to Gail Weathers. And Gail's
Mm.
interactions with her are just so much fun. And I love her motivation as well. You know, finding out that she's Billy's mum and that she's coming back. You know, again, it's a bit of a
Yeah.
Mrs. Voorhees type you know, angle. And yeah, she's just, I think Laurie Metcalf is just, she just really makes that role just
She
so, so
does.
much fun. And
Mhm.
yeah, that one's really fun. Number 2 is the wonderful Stu Macher, because, you know, he is just great. Matthew, I don't think, I've said this so many times to people before, but I don't think anyone except Matthew Lillard could have played that role. You know how
Mm.
sometimes you'll see roles and you'll be like, oh yeah, I could picture another actor. No, no. Stu Macher, it has to be Matthew Lillard. That
That's
energy
right.
that he brings, that dynamic, frenetic energy, just everything about him when he's Ghostface, when he's just Stu. He's got some
Yep.
of my favorite lines in the movie. He is so much
Yes.
fun. And yeah, he just brings that manic quality. And I just love at the end when he and Billy are falling apart. And that bit where
Mm.
Billy accidentally hits him with the phone and how that was unscripted and just,
Yeah.
oh, you hit me with the phone, you dick.
Yeah.
So good. It's so, so
Yeah.
good.
And so
And then
natural.
oh, he is. And that's the thing. And see, that's the difference I felt between him and Amber. Is Amber
Yes.
didn't feel as natural to me, whereas Stu, it's like, this is just who he is. This dude is just
Right.
living life. He's just having fun. And I
Mhm.
think it's really great. And then number 1, it might be boring, but it's got to be the OG. It's got to be Billy Loomis, because
Right?
he is fantastic. I mean, he got the crazy eyes from his mother, first of all. I mean, Skeet Ulrich out here being like the shadiest looking dude on the planet. And I remember
Yes.
watching in Eli Roth's History of Horror, Skeet Ulrich was talking about Billy, and he said, Billy's the killer. And he's the killer so bad that you believe that there's no way he can be the killer. And I'm like, that's exactly how I felt the first time I
Mm.
watched Scream. I'm like, oh, yeah, he's the killer. But it's like, oh, but wait, no, that is way too obvious. And he is way
Right.
too evil. And then you have that great fake out again with his death. And then, of course, we all go a little mad sometimes, which
Mhm.
is just chef's kiss. And yeah,
Mhm.
I love Billy. I'll always love Billy. And I think that he is such an effective ghost face. And I really do like the reveal that there is something a little deeper. You know, you find out about
Mhm.
him and his dad and Sydney's mum and how his mum left him. And what I really love
Yeah.
about that scene is the look on Stu's face, because I don't think Stu realized that. Stu has this look like, oh crap, there's actually something more going on. And I just
Mhm.
think that Skeet has so much fun. Again, so much fun playing the role. And I know they wanted David Arquette for Billy at first, and
Yes.
I could not see that working at all.
No.
So but
No.
he's perfect as Dewey, obviously. So there it is. That is my Ghostface ranking. Little controversial, but somewhat interesting, I guess.
I no, I like it. I liked how it's different, but you have your reasoning for it, and you have a connection to these characters for different reasons. And that's again, that's what makes it so special. You know, for me, like for instance, like for me, Mickey is higher up because even though he's disappeared, and even though Laurie was such a great presence, such a strong presence, I still connected with him for some reason. And when he did reveal himself, it's like, holy crap, because he was like right there in their midst. He was
Yeah.
like, he was dancing with everyone in the cafeteria and trying to get everyone pumped up. And I just love Timothy Oliphant so much. He's just
Yes.
so amazing. But
Hmm.
that's what's fun about ranking these Ghostface killers, is that, and even for me, sometimes my second half of the list will change just a little bit. You know what I
Mm.
mean? First half is solid.
Yes.
Billy, Stu. For me, Jill's in third place.
Nice. Nice.
And because that reveal, like you said, was,
Oh.
man,
Hmm.
I was like, "Are you freaking serious?" And the first thing I
Yeah.
thought too was like, "Your mom, bro, your mom." What?
That's
So,
cold. That is cold, man.
oh my God, man, she was as cold as they get, no doubt about
Hmm.
it. And Jill Roberts is fantastic.
Yes.
Um, That was cool. I really, really appreciated that.
Thanks.
For you guys in the chat, I know some of you guys in the chat have been talking about your favorites. Feel free to keep putting those there or in the comments. We really appreciate you guys, joining in on this fun conversation. And Zanesha, heading out. Have a good night. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correct. Let me know if I'm not. But thank you for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. My man Matt's in the house. ZZM, what's up, bro? Good to
Yes.
see you. That's right. Amber and Jack want it to be Stu. It's a good point, man.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be Stu. It's so
Yeah,
true.
they do.
Yep. And man's got the link in for Steven coming up in about 15 minutes. So definitely make sure you guys head on over to my brother and see him and Zach hanging out. That's going to be fantastic. I love hearing those two talk about Scream. Again, when you said earlier, the smile coming onto your face, talking about the possibilities, and even though, is it plausible for Stu to come back?
Mm.
But again, that's the fun, because I get that too, listening to you, or obviously, watching Steven and Zach will be on tonight. It's just, there's an energy to the franchise.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it special. And that's what's kept it going all of these years. I mean, you got to give them a hell of a lot of credit. I mean, other than Halloween being able to stay relevant in all of the decades. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Absolutely.
Um, I'd be remiss, and I know I said we were gonna keep it to an hour. We're over an hour, so I'm gonna
That's
start.
okay.
I
It's all
know.
good.
I'm gonna start winding this down, but I have to bring up, because we got a lot of people in the chat. I have to bring up Halloween. I love Halloween, and it's one of those OGs that's near and dear to my heart. Do you, first of all, any quick thoughts on the current trilogy, and are you optimistic about this whole idea of the TV series for Halloween that's going to be coming soon, hopefully soon?
Mhm. All right. So the original Halloween is one of my favorite horror movies. Obviously, it's a classic. And Michael Myers is my favorite horror villain of all time. I love the shape. Just. Ooh. Halloween was one of those movies that when I first saw it scared the crap out of me. Couldn't look out of the window because I was like, Michael Myers is going to be lurking on my corner, just watching me, like the freak that he is. But when they announced Halloween 2018, oh, I was so excited. And then they released the trailer for it, and then it came out, and it was so good, like so good. I loved that one. I thought that it brought Michael back to like how scary he was, because I mean, bless the
Mm,
franchise, but some of these installments kind of diminish Michael a little bit. I mean, when you're
yeah,
taken out by Busta Rhymes electrifying your nuts, that kind of brings it down a little bit, you know. So I'm just saying, it kind of
that's
takes the
right.
scare away.
It
So I
does.
really I really love that they brought that angle back. So he was terrifying again, and I thought that was great. Oh, thanks for the shout out, man. And I thought that bringing Laurie back was fantastic. I thought that her
Mm,
characterization in 2018 was so good and so strong, and you could definitely tell that they used H2O as a bit of a blueprint. They wanted, that
mhm.
traumatized Laurie, and I just think Jamie Lee Curtis was so good. I also think that her daughter and her granddaughter were fantastic, and I love, like,
Yes.
at the end, that it's the Strode women coming together and taking down around Michael. And I actually think that it could have stopped there because I thought 2018 was just a great movie in general.
Yes.
However, slightly unpopular opinion, I love Halloween Kills. I
There it is.
love it. I think it
Good for
is
you.
so much fun.
It is. It is. Come on, there's no lying here. I know a lot of people have issues with it, but I love that movie.
Look,
oh my god.
I understand the whole subplot with the crowd scene at the hospital that was a little bit off and the evil dies tonight, whatever. But Michael Myers in this film, dude, he is taking no prisoners, you know, like that whole scene where he takes on the fire department. Yes, we'll be best friends, EZM. Totally on board with anyone else who thinks Michael is number one. But yeah, Halloween Kills, just so much fun. So the kills were awesome. I loved that they brought like Lindsay back, and I love that they brought back at least the character of Tommy. I thought that I loved seeing Haddonfield versus Michael, although I do remember at the end when they were going to fight him in the street, I was like, oh, every single one of you is gonna die tonight.
Yes. Hey, look. Michael comes there. He's surrounded by 80,000 people, and all he's giving a shit about is the mask. When we were in the theater, I know I told this story 1,000 times, but I just love it. When we were in the theater and that music kicks on and James Jude Courtney bends down to get the mask and just puts it on, I was like, that's my boy. That's my boy.
Me too.
It's just great. Those are the moments that icons will always be remembered for. That's a moment to me, anyways. Yes.
So I thought that was really fun. And I thought the ending was really fun. You know, the cliffhanger where he came in and killed Karen, and you were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But then came Halloween Ends. And I was not a fan. I was not a fan of this one at all. I don't know what happened, man. They like just dropped the ball. Why is Michael Myers some old guy hanging out in the sewer being taken on by some 20-year-old punk? Like, what's that about?
It is a lot to swallow, I know. And and my good buddy Steven too, you know, we've had conversations about this together on our own streams on the Lethal Collective. And by the way, Steven's heading out. Hey, brother, thank you for being here. I'll be seeing you in a few minutes over on your channel. You guys get ready to head on over in a couple minutes. We're about 10 minutes out. And thank you for being here, brother. And yes, Halloween Kills rules.
Yes.
But and I won't rant on because we're going to get ready to end up. But Halloween Ends has some good elements, but I also think so many missed opportunities. Now, I'm not going to lie. Right now in this moment, because I haven't watched it in a couple of months, there's a part of me that's saying, you know what? We got to do a watch party. And if you were able to watch it and just give some commentary just for the fun of it, you know, you guys in the chat or watching this on replay, let us know. But that might be something we got to set up for in the future.
That could be fun.
If we could, just for the fun of it. But yeah, I love the trilogy in general. I think it did a lot for horror. I think it was funny because I think it was helping Scream and Scream was helping it, and they were helping horror, you know, kind of showing that, you know, horror is very bankable and that us fans are going to go out and support these films. So I'll always have a soft spot for the trilogy. As we get ready to head on out, any new upcoming ideas or things you're going to be tackling on your channel?
I am actually starting to work on one that I think you guys will find interesting. I'm going to do a video called Comparing Carrie, where I'm going to watch all 3 of the Carrie movies. There's the original, the little mini series that came out in the early 2000s, and then the Chloe Grace Moretz one, because I love Carrie as a book and as a movie. And I think that all 3 of the adaptations did something interesting. So I am planning to do that one coming up. I will at some point, I am going to revisit the Halloween trilogy because I do want to do an in-depth look at that. And obviously when Scream 7 comes out, whenever that may be, I will obviously talk about that. In the meantime, it'll mostly just still be my Charmed and Buffy content, which is still kind of horror adjacent. But that's what's in the works for now. But the next big thing will be the Carrie one because I've already started work on that. So I think that one will be fun.
Well, that's cool. Carrie is fantastic. We've talked about Carrie here. We've had Carrie. Carrie actually won the championship on Battle World and beat. Yeah, you know, it was a great episode. I think it was like 3 or 4 episodes ago, and she was representing Stephen King. But we love Carrie. It's Coriander's favorite well, 1A,
Nice.
1B, that, and an American Werewolf in London. But Carrie is so much fun. So I'll definitely, I know she'll be very interested to see
Maybe she'll
what you
forgive
have
me
to
for
say.
my Blair Witch and Sixth Sense references.
She, she will. She will.
Poor Coriander.
She knows there's so many people that love it, myself included. I'm a fan too. So anytime we get that conversation going, she's like, oh man, here we go. Um, so, look, for you guys in the chat, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. All of you guys that have supported Rachel over on her channel, clicking the link and so forth. We appreciate that. For you guys watching this on replay, please make sure that you click over to Rachel's channel, subscribe, and make sure you support her. She's a fantastic content creator with a lot of great takes, but also a very kind person too. And that was one of the reasons why I kept saying to myself, if I can get you onto a live stream, it would be so much fun to just talk, because you have so much to say. And when you're talking about YouTube, that's what I love. I love people that can just have conversation. Those are the content creators I always gravitate towards. So thank you so much for doing this. I really
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
having me. It has been so much fun, and
Yeah.
hopefully I might pop up again in the future and see you guys.
Yeah, we got to set up something, obviously, our schedules being, the opposite
Yeah.
side of the day and night. But I'd love to have you come on and continue a discussion. I had quite a few more questions I was going to throw it at you, so I got plenty more to talk
Save
about
them for part 2.
for part two. And also I would love to set up that ends watch
Yes,
party at some point.
that
That
would be
that would
great.
be, yeah. So we'll talk about that. So I'll have you just hold on. Once I play the intro, we'll go backstage and just say our goodbyes. So just hold on 1 second. For you guys, thank you for hanging out. And look at Man is still working. She's putting in the links for the Carrie Battle World episode. And
Thanks,
oh my
man.
gosh, you're all right. Scott, thank you for being here. Saying see you, Night and Rachel. Peace, everyone. Uh, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. And for all of you guys, leave us some comments. We'll talk about that. And man, thank you so much. My reaction to Deadpool 3. Thank you. Yes, check that out. Yeah, I love it. Love it. Anyways, for you guys, thank you so much. We will catch you next time. Go and check out my buddy Steven on Craving Something Scary. He's going to be talking to Zach Cherry in a few minutes. And we will catch you guys later. As always, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Night Watch. Peace.